Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to Cantina Cast. Today I am talking about The Edge of Balance Part 1, written by Shima Shinya and Justina Ireland. The reason I'm doing a refresher on Part 1 is because Part 3 of The Edge of Balance is about to come out on August 13th. Now, something to keep in mind about the Edge of Balance manga is that first in phase one, you actually had two volumes come out in phase one. So one and two came out in phase one. Then there was another volume of The Edge of Balance that came out in phase two, which is called The Edge of Balance Precedent. And then in phase three, we're about to have volume three of The Edge of Balance. So it can be a little bit weird with the way that they did the numbering since we had two volumes come out during phase one. But just keep in mind that The Edge of Balance Precedent is the phase two volume. These comics also follow the same characters. So Arkoff is a pretty prominent character in this series. We see him in volume one, two, Edge of Balance Precedent, and then it looks like we're going to see him in volume three since he's on the cover. And I actually read these out of order. I read phase two, The Edge of Balance Precedent. I read that before I read volumes one and two. And really, the only reason that I didn't read volumes one and two before I read The Edge of Balance Precedent is just because I hadn't read manga before. So I guess because of that, I just wasn't really in a rush to get to these. And I totally ended up regretting that because The Edge of Balance Precedent ended up being one of my favorite reads from phase two. And I wish that I would have read it sooner. So when I read phase two, The Edge of Balance Precedent, see, the number system is, I'm having to keep it straight as I'm talking about it. But as I read The Edge of Balance Precedent, and then when I went back and read volumes one and two back from phase one, I realized I had totally missed out on a story that I ended up really liking because I love Arkoff as a character. Yeah, if you haven't read manga before, don't let that stop you. I thought that it was going to be like a completely different new concept to me, but if you like comics, you're going to be able to read the manga just fine. And so, for that reason, since I ended up really loving The Edge of Balance Precedent, and then I loved going back and reading volumes one and two, I'm super excited for volume three to come out. I just love the cover. It looks like it's going to pick back up on that story that I've really come to enjoy with the first three editions of this. So I'm just really looking forward to it. So I figured because of that, now would be a really good time to go back and do a refresher of the other mangas from phase one, since I've already covered The Edge of Balance Precedent. And at this point, I am going to start describing the plot of The Edge of Balance Volume 1. So if you haven't read that yet and you're planning on it, now is the time when I'm going to start saying spoilers. So this story opens up with the Republic Fair on Valo is going to be happening soon, which if you've been keeping up with phase one, you know that the Republic Fair ends up having a major attack. It goes really horribly, and it's one of the major victories of the Nihil. And it's one of the parts of phase one where things really started ramping up and getting really, really serious. So this manga takes place right before that happens, or at least it opens right before that happens. We do start off with the hyperspace emergencies, and we see Stellan Geos show up, and they're relocating people that have been affected by this. And this is when we see Arkoff for the first time. Him and Lily, who was his Padawan, they are relocating refugees to live in other places that have not been affected by the emergencies. And the main place that they're working out of is a planet called Banshee. And over time, we do see that everybody's getting more established on Banshee. Arkoff and Lily are working there, as well as Lily's Padawan Kieran and a group of younglings, and the refugees are starting to establish their life on this planet. There are some strange things that start happening, though. There's a destruction of crops. There is a townsperson named Mr. Kuba who becomes sick, and his illness is really strange. Like it seems to have like a psychological component to it. He's really not in his right mind. And they start to go out into the forest and try to look into this and see what's going on. So when Lily and Kieran go into the forest, they do find Gear and they're attacked. The other younglings that are there, they go and get Arkoff, so Arkoff comes to help as well, and it ends up being a big fight against the Gear, which if you've been keeping up with the High Republic, you know that the Gear are very difficult to defeat because of their dark side powers and also because of the fact that they're just hard to kill in general. I mean, you can cut their arms off and they grow back, and It's just it when they're fighting these Drengir, they're kind of having a hard time actually making any progress. Something else too is that this story, it is taking place at a time where the Jedi didn't really know a whole lot about the Drengir. Later on in the story, we do see Stellan Geos comes back and does kind of explain some things that kind of like how the Drengir work and stuff like that, but this isn't common knowledge amongst all the Jedi. So this is the first time that they on Banshee have encountered something like this before. They also were having kind of an inner conflict about killing them too. If killing them is really the right thing to do, if it's justified, because of course at this time there's a lot of hesitation to ending life. And eventually Lily comes to the conclusion where she's like, we obviously can't like have a conversation with these things and they're going to just keep attacking and killing people. There's no way to make them stop attacking without killing them. So that's just what we're going to have to do. So they all use teamwork and they herd the Drengir over near the lake that is kind of near their settlement. They herd them all to the lake and they set all the Drengir on fire. And the fire does prove to be very effective, of course. About a week after this is when Stellan comes and visits, and Arkoff ends up going with Stellan to help Stellan fight the Nihil. And this is something that makes Lily really nervous because she's used to having Arkoff around. While she's not really a Padawan anymore, to me, she feels like a new Jedi Knight. So she is able to be on her own, but it's a little bit nerve wracking, especially considering what's been going on. They're concerned about another attack happening. They're concerned, especially because these Drengir are very powerful. They're also concerned because they have Drengir and Nihil stuff going on at the same time. So it's a lot to deal with. And so Lily is nervous about Arkoff leaving. And the conversation that they have when Arkoff is getting ready to leave, I found really interesting because there's a thing about with Lily and Arkoff where Lily her goal is to surpass Arkoff in terms of power and skill and all of this. And it's like, yeah, of course that's the goal is you want to, grow to be you want to learn everything that you can from your master and then some. So it makes sense. But hearing the way that Lily and Arkoff discuss this, I found this to be kind of a unique type of conversation because literally uses the word surpass. I promise to surpass you, is what she says to Arkoff. So I thought that was just a really interesting way that the two of them discuss this concept where it's not just about being as good as your master. You actually want to be better than your master. And if you have a good master, a selfless master, then your master should want that too. Your master should want you to be better than they are because that's what's best for you. That's what's best for the order. So I just really liked the way that they were talking about it, especially because it made me think like, yeah, I mean, of course, that's what Arkoff should want. But I just found the way that Lily was wording that and Arkoff was trying to like encourage her to think that way. I found that to be kind of unique. Something else that happens when Stellan is there is he requests an autopsy on the victims of the Drengir. And the reason for this is because they were actually turned to wood, which is a weird phenomenon that they haven't really seen before. They're trying to find out why exactly that is. Later on in the story, we find out that this is unique to Banshee, and it has to do with how the Drengir on Banshee evolved for that particular planet. Once Stellan and Arkoff leave, everybody on Banshee is nervous about another attack, but Lily is really trying to keep everybody calm. She's also making sure that everybody keeps training. She's keeping Kieran training, all the younglings are training. She wants everybody to stay in top form. So if there is another attack, they're going to be able to hold their own and it's not just going to be them like a bunch of sitting ducks. During all this training, Lily senses a disturbance in the force. She actually senses it a couple times. Sounds like it's a combination of what's going on Valo, which is revealed later in the story. We don't really get like a play by play of what exactly happened on Valo, but it is referenced. And also the fact that there's something fishy going on with the whole Drengir thing. While there hasn't been another attack yet, it's like, how did they get here? There's something not right about that. Like somebody else has to be involved. It can't just be like a random occurrence. And so deep down, that's kind of like her gut feeling. They end up coming up with a theory that Mr. Kuba, who was the first victim of the turning into wood thing, basically that was how his illness progressed, was it started off as an illness and then later on progressed into him turning into wood. And the theory is that somebody gave him the spores. He was the first victim, and he was a farmer, and he did have like earlier in the story you see him holding a box, and he mentions that it's some special seeds. And so there's a theory that Lily and the younglings have that somebody gave him those spores and deliberately brought the Dringir to Banshee. And it's probably one of the other refugees because those are the only other people here. So Lily and the younglings, they don't figure out who that is in this issue, but us as the reader, it is revealed that the person who did this is Mr. Zaret, who is another refugee. We do see him earlier in the story, just kind of out and about, kind of asking them how they're doing and stuff like that. He doesn't play a huge role, but it is somebody who we have seen before by the time this reveal happens. This is revealed to the reader because he's having a conversation about this with someone. So we hear the conversation as the reader, but the other characters don't know this yet. And so we did end this volume on kind of a suspicious note of Mr. Zaret is the person that brought the Dringir here. He's just out loose running around. There's a chance he's going to bring more. We don't know yet at the end of volume 1 at least. So we'll see what happens next in volume 2. I also wanted to mention too that at the end of volume 1 there is a little bonus story which was fun. It has nothing to do with the Dringir, but it's a little bonus story about Lily and the younglings trying to help the rest of the refugees figure out how to live in peace with the indigenous species on this planet. And the indigenous people on this planet are these little like bird creatures, and they're so cute. So that was a fun little story. It had nothing to do with like the bigger plot, but it was a fun little read. So keep an eye out for my refresher on volume 2 of this manga, which is going to be coming soon. And then after the third volume of this comes out on August 13th, I will also put out another video covering the newest volume. If you've been hesitant to read this series because you've never read manga before, like I originally was, don't let that stop you. I found it super easy to follow, even though manga is something that is new to me. And I really enjoyed the art and I really enjoyed the story. It's ended up becoming one of my favorite High Republic stories. So if you are interested in the story that's being told here, but you're just unsure about if manga is for you, if you tend to like visual storytelling, if you like comics and things like that, then I really feel like you're going to love this story. So definitely give it a try if you haven't yet. And thanks so much for watching, y'all. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.